Hello and welcome to the debate. I'm your host Maqbool with you at PTV World. In today's show, we're going to be taking a look at two important topics. The first is going to be on what is going on regarding the political situation, especially in terms of the kind of discussion around the date of the next polls. We've seen previously also that different statements have come in from different sides, with the Prime Minister also talking about how he's not only hopeful, he's in fact certain that elections will be held in the next 3 to 4 months. At the same time, we also know that the ECP has been going around conducting various meetings, but it says that the agenda of those meetings is not the date of the new polls, but in fact is to ensure that the delimitation process is unquestionable. And this is something that is a priority for them right now. And they will be taking up the matter of announcing the date for the next polls at the end of this month. They've also talked about how their meetings with different political parties have proved to be quite beneficial, with no noteworthy party actually putting any objection to the delimitation process, however differing on the timeline of the new polls. We also know, of course, that in light of the situation, given the kind of circumstances that the country is facing, there were also question marks being raised about the tenure of the caretaker setup, which the Prime Minister earlier also denied, saying that this is only a matter of 3 to 4 months, and it's expected that by the end of January we will be having the next polls. However, this is of course not something that the ECP has confirmed or announced yet. We also know at the same time that there was discussion previously between the President and the ECB, with the President also emphasizing a lot on the 90 days constitutional aspect and putting a lot of emphasis on the fact that there needs to be announcement of a date, and we expected something to come in from his side as well, but we've seen now that there hasn't been any response coming in from the President's side since last Friday. Neither is a spokesperson available for comment. And this is important, especially in terms of what we're going to be seeing tomorrow in terms of the end of his tenure and whether or not he's going to be stepping down or will be taking the constitutional concession to move on till the election of his successor. So there are questions that still remain, with a lot of political parties also raising reservations on the kind of partiality that they now talk about with reference to the President, and claim that this may not be a good idea to continue with the elections for the next government under his leadership as well. So it remains to be seen what the decision is going to be tomorrow and how that is going to unfold. That is going to be our focus in the first segment, while in the second one we're going to take a look at the kind of issues that Pakistan is facing, especially in terms of the security challenges and threats by the TTP and the relationship that this has with the Afghan Taliban regime, and the kind of emphasis that Pakistan yet again has laid on their response on how they need to act and ensure that their territory is not used against any other soil. And this is important not only in terms of what Pakistan has been dealing with both within Pakistan but also at the Pak-Afghan border, and then of course what is going on within Afghanistan as well. At the same time, we also know that recently both the Prime Minister and Ambassador has talked about the equipment that has fallen into the hands of the TTP fighters, and this is something that had been left by the US, which we saw that the NSC spokesperson John Kirby denied, saying that this equipment was in fact not left by the US but was given to the Afghan forces, since that was the primary responsibility of the US troops to equip them for the defense of their motherland, and it is them that have left this equipment, and then it has reached to organizations such as the TTP. And this is important, especially in terms of the kind of efforts Pakistan is making to ensure that this threat is mitigated. At the same time, the US has also again talked about support towards Pakistan, and claiming that they understand the kind of threats it faces and the problems it faces, and that it is committed to providing support to the country, and that the issue remains at the Pak-Afghan border. So we'll try to understand what this means and how exactly do we move forward, both with the cooperation that is extending to us and of course the Afghan Taliban regime. For this and more, as always, in the studios, I've been joined by senior analysts Farrukh, Pitafi and Faisal. And for our first segment, we've also been joined online by Dr. Niaz, Murtaza, who's a political analyst. Thank you very much, Dr. Niaz, for joining us and being a part of the discussion. We have seen, of course, in the recent days that there has been a lot of emphasis on the fact that it's not going to take very, very long for the ECP to hold the general elections, and that the Prime Minister has also reiterated that he's certain of the next 3 to 4 months being the only time frame that we're looking at And it seems that the ECB might also be going by the same, even though we haven't heard an announcement. Do you think that the kind of movement that we see now, both by the caretaker setup and the ECB, is pointing towards harmony from different political parties, from the civil military leadership with the ECB and the caretaker setup in moving forward with this time frame, and that from now till the time frame that we're looking at in the next 3 to 4 months, there won't be any major obligation or any sort of hindrance in this matter, whether it's from the president or any other political party?
Well, I mean, it's difficult to, predict accurately the future of Pakistani politics. But if I look at everything else, I do not foresee a very prolonged delay in the election, where, under General Zia, we had elections postponed for years and years. I don't see that kind of, a scenario building up. I have seen no strong evidence of anybody planning to do that. In fact, every stakeholder has stated that they'll be held sooner rather than later, and I think there is incentive for everybody, especially the key important stakeholders with political power and the means to control the date of elections. That I think everybody is interested in having elections sooner rather than later, and that's because of several reasons. There is the economic situation; it's deteriorating fairly rapidly, and as long as you have a caretaker setup, everybody knows that this setup is going to be around for just a few months. So people don't really expect long-term planning from them. They don't assign that much importance to whatever utterances or actions that a caretaker makes. Then I think there will also be external pressure. The key donors in IMF and in other places, they're also keen to ensure that Pakistan remains on track on its democratic journey. So I think all in all, at this stage I don't see a long delay, but there is still the issue that even if elections are held in January, late January, that will still be beyond the 90 days, very clear 90-day period laid in our constitution. So symbolically, if not so much practically, it's still a reason to be concerned about. And that's why it would be good, if all the stakeholders get together
from
and
the
take
political
a clear
parties or
stand on.
any other quarter that this is something that they really want to happen. I know that there have been statements, but there's been a lot of push for a date of elections, for the elections to be conducted. Do you really think that this is something, if there is a schedule announced, if there is a date announced, that political parties will really push for once there is a sort of schedule in mind, or will they just let it go?
And Dr. Niaz, if you can allow me to add in, if we obviously talk about the delimitation process, ECP, according to sources, ECP claims that not of any of the significant political parties have raised any issues related to delimitation. Of course, all of them, they are in the favor of delimitation. If all of them are in the favor of delimitation, then they should be knowing that, of course, the election date would be of something beyond the 90 days. If they already know, then why they are creating a fuss about it?
Well, I won't say that every political party is in favor of delimitation. Some are, like, the PMLN, JUI, but then, others like PTI and PPP have been quite firm in saying that, the importance of for 90 days is more clearly laid out in the constitution than the requirement to do a delimitation, especially since, the provincial seat proportion has not changed. That's the only place where, the constitution requires, going by the new census. If, the number of seats at the provincial level for the National Assembly, if that changes, yes, then there is a requirement for new delimitations. But without that, as the government itself has said that, the provincial seat numbers are not changing their proportions, then I don't think, and, key lawyers that I trust, legal authorities, constitutional authorities that I trust, they are very clear that in that case, a delimitation is not required, but the requirement to hold election is paramount. But it's good that the election commission has also reduced the length for the delimitation, and instead of February now it may be January. So I think what is good is that there's no tug of war. Everybody should get down. The president and the chief election commissioner. These are the two important stakeholders in terms of deciding and then holding the elections. So it would be good, I mean, if the president, I think he has the authority to even unilaterally announce a date, but I don't think that would be good, because then it will be the same situation as we had with the provincial elections for Punjab and KP, that they were unfortunately just ignored. So I think it would be good, if the key stakeholders get together and come to an agreement as close to the constitutional requirement of 90 days as possible.
Right. Faisal, I know that you talked about the different political parties, and I understand Dr. Niaz's opinion, but I want to understand your perspective as well in terms of them creating a fuss about it, because I don't understand if that really is something that they're actually doing. Do you think that the fuss is actually being created? Because we've seen statements coming in, but there hasn't been a very strong sort of backlash that I've seen as of now. And correct me if I'm wrong. Yeah.
Sana, if we talk about what I was quoting as first, it is related to obviously their statements coming on TV channels and in the shows. Of course, they suggest that they do want to portray themselves as democratic parties, and of course they believe in democracy, they believe in constitution, and they believe in all of the aspects related to elections. They should be conducted in accordance to law, in accordance to the constitution.
They're also okay with what's happening.
Yeah, they are okay with it, with the delimitations as well, and what they want to portray as is that they are complying with the constitution. At the same time, they do know that there are challenges, and them challenges they need to be adjusted before the election comes up. Sana, with your permission, I just want to highlight one more thing, which is, to me, I think even if these parties they end up going to the courts, to me, I think I am seeing a sort of necessity of doctrine of necessity in coming days, in which of course there are several challenges which are being faced by Pakistan right now. Especially I'm talking about the internal security of Pakistan, number one, and number two, economic security of Pakistan as well. So sustainability of economic sustainability plus security sustainability is the key factor, and I think all of the parties they will face this challenge.
Okay.
And at the same time the courts, they might go in the favor of ECP, obviously on the basis that the extraordinary situation would require extraordinary measures.
Right. And Farrukh, I want to understand that further, because even beyond what Faisal is talking about, there is already a debate in terms of the Constitution and the Legal Act and the Elections Amendment Act. So that is something that obviously we're still trying to understand, and that maybe something that would be beneficial to explore, irrespective of whether or not it's going to impact these general elections in terms of where we stand and what sort of takes precedence over. Do you think that beyond this, there is any other aspect in which the current situation is objectionable, given the fact that initially we also talked about how what we needed was a time frame, and it seems that that is at least being given to us right now. Is there something more that we should be given?
Right, Sana, actually, no, we are not being given a time frame, and that is actually the trigger of today's discussion, because had we been given a date by the Election Commission, from day one, my emphasis, rather than being on 90 days, has been on having a finite and a limited, time frame where we at least know when exactly the elections are going to take place. I hope in coming days, Election Commission actually gives us at least a tentative date so that we know what exactly to expect. My biggest problem, Sana, with constitution and constitutionalism in this country is that I remember in my 25 years of journalism, especially 20 years ago, 21 years ago, when General Musharraf actually came up with his LFO. At that time, there used to be a debate about electoral reforms. periodically we have actually entered into negotiations and we have come up with more upgrades to the election laws. But then what we look, when we look at the constitution, it really confuses me. For a living document, it seems to go to sleep quite often. For example, we keep on talking about 90-day period, right? That is something that is cast in stone, and we haven't been given any kind of extension by the constitution per se. But then the same article is supposed to give us punishment for any kind of or recourse for violation of that time period. But there is none.
Yeah.
So how can it be that something is compulsory, but there are no consequences if you don't actually treat it as compulsory, right? Amazingly, all our political parties have been at it for quite some time, and we haven't seen them actually doing their due. So what exactly is happening right now? I understand that various political parties, particularly People's Party, which was incidentally averse to the idea of census being included in the election. Somehow the Chief Minister actually okayed it in the last CCI, but they were not very big fans of it because MKM had issues, and when you address MKM's concerns, automatically zero-sum game ensures that People's Party is not happy. And People's Party has been saying for quite some time that it is not that much interested in delimitation, as Dr. Saab was just saying. But the problem right now is, where is leadership of People's Party and PMLN? Of course, we keep on seeing second-tier, third-tier leaders appearing on television, but where is Bilawal Bhutto Zardari? Where is Asif Ali Zardari? Where is Shahbaz Sharif? Where is Maryam Nawaz? Why are they not speaking to the media? I think that when they took over and the coalition came into power, they actually came with a claim that they are going to actually help the system in correcting what was wrong.
Yeah.
But in the end, the number of the cabinet members would tell you that it wasn't the case. So in the end, what they ended up doing is burning themselves out. At this moment, all political parties, they might say that they want early elections, but they are hardly prepared to go for it. We haven't seen any candidate list, we haven't seen any kind of manifesto, we haven't seen any kind of program.
Do you think they're
Tentative
waiting
program.
for the date?
I don't think that would be safe to assume, because then at least we would have seen some kind of lip service to it, right?
Yeah.
We haven't seen that either. The biggest problem is because all political parties are not actually, they are not in habit of doing their homework. They end up becoming very, inauthentic or very incompetent kind of bunch of people. But they don't actually even work hard to preserve themselves. That's why every time the establishment grows stronger, they are in no position to actually fight back, because they have always been playing politics of establishment, where you see turnover. People, for example, let me give you an example. Today was a Corps Commander meeting, right? The Corps commanders that were there and the army chief 3 years ago, 4 years ago, at least if the army chief was the previous army chief and he continued for six years, but at least the composition of the Corps Commander meeting, which is the apex body in the army, keeps on changing, right? There's a turnover. 3 years, people retire or other people come in. So you have fresh blood always pumping into the veins of the system there. But look at the cabinet, ministers of PMLN in the previous government, the government that they had even before that, and the government they had before that. Same people. They don't seem to retire. There is no fresh blood, hardly ever. Similarly, People's Party, and we have seen the same case with PTI as well. So what happens when you are surrounded by people that give you advice that you want, not what you need? You are actually ensuring that you're going to collapse at the first challenge.
Right.
And this is exactly what is happening. That's why the whole system doesn't seem to be listening to the political voices, and they have made themselves irrelevant. When I say this, people think that I have become suddenly dictatorial minded, but this is an argument I've been making
No, I
since
understand
ever.
your point. Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. Dr. Niaz, what do you think is the role here now of the president as well? Earlier, we saw a lot of debate around him talking about and putting a lot of pressure on the fact that this needs to happen in 90 days and that he's going to announce a date himself. But we haven't really seen any such thing happening, and there's now no communication. What do you think will be the next step tomorrow also, given the fact that we're also unclear what the president wants to move forward with, and what do you think will be a good idea given the scenario?
Yeah, I mean, there are two or three, centers from which a decisive action can come to varying extent. And, the president is one of them. And he is on record on saying that, elections should be held within 90 days. And he has the authority to, set a date according to the constitution. But he's suddenly gone silent. And I think he has another 4 or 5 days more, maybe a week more, to announce a date without, there being a delay, because, the election commission also needs around, I think, 60 days. So if he doesn't announce a date, say by the middle of September, then it would be too late for the elections to be held. So he's silent. The other center could have been, the Supreme Court. We've seen in so many cases it acting so fast, opening at midnight, and hearing petitions the very next day, and then daily hearings. But on this very important matter, it's also taking it easy, and then we are going to have a transition with the fact that there'll be a new person coming in from around the middle of September, and with just 1 week left, it seems it's already too late for the current Chief Justice to start hearings on this matter, because it takes a few days. So it seems that he's basically closed the book, and even People's Party has become a little more subtle. Before they were talking about 90 days. Now Mr. Bilawal Zardari said according to the constitution. So I think slowly, gradually, even those parties which were very firm about having elections within 90 days are softening their stance, and it looks more and more likely that everybody is resigned to at least 1 or 2 months delay. So I think what now everybody who likes the constitution and likes sticking to it can only hope that it doesn't become more than, say, 1 or 2 months, and say by the end of January we do have elections. So I think it would be good if even if it's going to be some delays, at least let's have the date, so that the uncertainty ends and everybody knows that it's not going to be a long-term delay, just maybe
Yeah, Dr. Niaz, there is another very important issue that is related to People's Party. Initially, we saw that they did say that they want a date within the time frame of 90 days, so that it is in accordance to the constitution. Suddenly, we saw they went quiet, and there are analysts who believe that it has everything to do with the anti-corruption drive which is going on in Sindh province right now, because obviously the previous provincial government, we are seeing that there are cases against them now, and hundreds of billions of rupees of corruption, it is being unearthed. So can you say that there is some relation between both of the things?
There could be, and and a lot of analysts believe that to be true. And let's remember that even before, the people who were giving these very firm dates of 90 days were second and third tier leaders. I don't remember Mr. Zardari or Mr. Bilawal themselves talking about 90 days. It was left to Sherry Rahman, Faratullah Babar, and other people like Raza Rabbani, constitutionalists like Raza Rabbani. And the first time that I think Bilawal, they both became very quiet for several weeks, Bilawal and Mr. Zardari. And when Bilawal first spoke about this issue, it was in 90 days. It was, according to the constitution. And, that can vary by whose, interpretation of the constitution you're talking about. So I think the pressure to hold it within 90 days is slowly receding. all the powers that were really interested in doing that are, slowly going quiet. The Supreme Court hasn't even started hearings. There are two or three petitions. There was one by PTI, one by Supreme Court Bar Association, and now yesterday there was one by the Sindh Bar Association. But there don't seem to be, any, plans by this current Chief Justice. And by the time the new Chief Justice comes in, it may already be too late.
Right. Thank you very much, Dr. Niaz Murtaza, for joining us and being a part of the discussion. Farrukh, I want to still understand in terms of the kind of responses that we're seeing from different political parties or the courts, as Dr. Niaz was mentioning, then it does seem as if a lot of these elements have been resigned to the matter, and that we'll probably get more clarity later as the ECP announces something soon. And I also want to know the role that there will be for the president in this situation if he's not stepping down tomorrow, given the fact that there is reservations around his partiality.
Right, Sana, I think that though we have already crossed that bridge, when it comes to his retirement, I think that he will, as per book, he will retire tomorrow, but I don't think he's going home right now. The second thing is that I don't think that he's going to be in a rush to give a date either. There are atmospherics and there are various things that actually complicate the situation. I think that biggest problem right now is that we have become, all of us have become the victim of tribalism. Tribalism how? For example, you were talking about Supreme Court earlier or the honorable courts. Do you think that there is a reason why the courts have made themselves irrelevant? I think there is. The tribalism that we kept on seeing for the last 1 year, where a sitting Chief Justice of Pakistan refused to actually convene a full court, and then repeatedly he kept on removing people who disagreed from the benches that he chose, actually speaks volume of that kind of tribalism. Anarchy always drives into and uses benefits from the division that might be there anywhere. Similarly, our intellectual class, they divided themselves, and by endorsing the similar kind of policies of one political party or the other, they have made themselves irrelevant, because then it is tribalism. People can say that today you are saying this is wrong, yesterday you were saying it is right. Similarly, the president's office, it was supposed to be an office that should have stayed away from all controversies of politics. Unfortunately, he's a good man, but he's trapped in such a bad situation where his own former party kept on pressuring him so much that he became a political item. When you become that, in the end, situation really becomes worse. Finally, earlier, two names were mentioned, Raza Rabbani and Farhatullah Babar. I'm more ideologically aligned with these two, and I respect them beyond anything. But frankly, if they can, their voice doesn't matter today, Sana. Why is it so? Their own party, the so-called ARD parties or PDM parties made them irrelevant.
Right.
Raza Rabbani was removed from Chairman Senate position. Somebody else was given that position because Dari Saab was not very happy with the idea that this man is there. Similarly, Farhatullah Babar couldn't even get a seat in the Senate. So if you make good people irrelevant, are we responsible for them becoming irrelevant? No.
Right. Right, absolutely, and that's of course something that we need to think about. We're now going to also focus on our next segment, which looks after the relationship in terms of what Pakistan expects from the Afghan Taliban regime and the kind of threats that it faces from TTP. Again, something that the Afghan Taliban regime, unfortunately, failed to contribute in terms of protecting their soil against Pakistan, and then also the matter of the equipment that has been left behind. For this, we've been joined online by Mr. Torek Farhadi, who's an Afghan affairs expert, and it's been a while since we've had you on our show, Mr.
Great
Torek,
to see you.
and it's
Great
wonderful
to
to
see
see
you,
you.
sir.
Absolutely. Farhadi Sahab, the situation, of course, right now that is under discussion for Pakistan, at least, is there's a lot of concern around the security challenges, around the kind of threats that we've seen and the increase in attacks that we have seen, particularly this year alone. And I want to then understand, given the fact that Pakistan is dealing with such a huge threat, it of course has its expectations with the Afghan Taliban regime. Unfortunately, they haven't been met so far, but now the matter of the equipment again is on the rise, where there is a lot of talk coming in from our leadership as well, that it is this equipment that is coming in the hands of the TTP which is causing a lot of trouble. The US is denying that this is not their equipment, that it was given to the Afghan forces and was left behind. What do you think is the reality of the situation, and who's going to take responsibility of the matter?
Well, it's great to be with you again, and I would like to give my condolences to the families of the soldiers who have fallen in Pakistan, victims of terrorism. I say this because we have been victim of terrorism as well in Afghanistan, and our geostrategic location and the presence of the Soviet Union and after that the United States made it that radicalism appeared in this region in Afghanistan, and now the challenge is how to de-radicalize the political discourse, de-radicalize our people, essentially. On the topic of the armament, obviously, yes, it is very possible that at the beginning of the Taliban regime, not enough controls were in place, and the TTP got hold of weapons that they are now using. But weapons are one thing. It's the people who are using the weapons that are our problem. The problem is that these people, we have to find out what's their project for Pakistan. Do they have a better project for Pakistan than the majority of Pakistanis who want the country to progress and flourish economically? Do these people have any manifesto of a progressive Pakistan in the future? I don't think so. I think they have to be challenged on their theories, on their dogma, on their ideologies. And this goes the same in Afghanistan, that unfortunately the political climate is being radicalized. I think it is not my place to give advice to the Pakistani government, but the Pakistani government may want to talk to Afghans in general rather just than the Taliban government, because in the interests of both peoples, I think we have to de-radicalize our political discourse and challenge these people who are using the weapons, but behind the weapons is their radical dogma, which doesn't offer a very good future for neither Pakistan, neither Afghanistan.
Right. Farhadi, I'm glad that you actually drew the distinction between the Afghan Taliban and Afghan people. I want you to tell us what are the bodies that Pakistan should be connecting with or talking to if they want to talk to Afghan people, particularly regarding this issue. In the past, we have seen there used to be political parties and political elements, but they seem to be irrelevant right now. Are there any bodies that can be engaged in this fashion there?
And Farhadi Sahab, if you can also add to what sort of agency will the Afghan people or these bodies even have in terms of the kind of influence that we'll be hoping for in terms of our efforts to engage with them or de-radicalize them, or then of course have an impact on the decision makers. Do the people have that sort of agency in Afghanistan?
Well, you know, Afghanistan went through a disintegration of its political community. Most of the political community had to leave. Some of the political community was related to the presence of foreign forces, and they have left there mostly on social media. But inside Afghanistan, it is still possible to for delegations to do people-to-people meetings, and that is what will cause the Afghans also to change their minds on what the Pakistani government wants in Afghanistan. I think that wider contacts are needed with the Afghan people, with people in higher education, with the little that is left. But there are people who are left in Afghanistan that Pakistan should talk to. Of course, they should talk to the Taliban because they have the government. And they have the depots of weapons, etc. But Afghanistan is not summarized by Taliban. Taliban know it. some of the Taliban also would like to come out of this strait that they have put themselves in. There are different currents in the Taliban regime, and I think those things should be carefully studied, that we move in Afghanistan from this regime to another regime where, if Taliban are present, but also others should be present, to create an environment of different type of friendship with Pakistan, where the interests of both countries are preserved. And you asked the question of do the people have agency? The minute we talk to the people, basically we give them agency. So far, the political delegations that are going to Kabul are only meeting the Taliban, and that gives too much importance to the Taliban.
Dr. Farhadi, of course, when you talk about other elements, are we looking at Masharans from 3 provinces, let's call it Nuristan, Kunar and Nangarhar, all these 3 bordering provinces? Would it be rightly put if I say that Masharan from their side and Masharan from Pakistan's side on the border, they need to interact with each other as well, and they have to come to conclusion that safe havens, if they are provided in the other side of the border in these 3 provinces, they should not be provided at all. And if Pakistan wants to talk to Afghanistan, of course, with the Taliban regime is the same regime that actually came after Doha Accord, and in Doha Accord they categorically said that they will never be allowing their land to be used against any of the countries, so of course including Pakistan. Can we say that Pakistan should talk to Afghanistan to a length in which should be proposing that the joint action should be taken against the miscreants, whether they are on the other side of the border or this side of the border? Would it be rightly put?
And whether the tribal Masharan have any agency in Taliban's Afghanistan, sir?
Well, the Mishran are respected by the people in the villages and in the where they live, and meeting with them is a very good idea, because they are the people of the area. They have lived through the difficulties of Afghanistan, and Afghanistan has gone through 40 years of difficulties, and the bordering areas in Pakistan as well. A conversation can start in these 3 provinces that you mentioned, but I think it has to go beyond. I think conversations with people and the Mishran of the north of Afghanistan and the west of Afghanistan and Kandahar, those conversations have to go beyond just meeting Taliban delegations, and also giving a signal to the Taliban that the way it is going, neither Afghanistan is going towards progress, and it's becoming a risk for Pakistan, because every day we see that, unfortunately, there are skirmishes on the Pakistan side, and soldiers lose their lives. I think I say this because we have experienced our soldiers losing their lives in the decades of war that we had. And I think it's time for us to find newer solutions, revised solutions on how we should look at each other. And we should position our countries towards attracting investments from the rest of the world, and improvement of the economic situation, from which everyone will benefit. The Mishran will benefit, the people will benefit, and even the Taliban will be freed from the corner they have put themselves in right now, I think.
Right. Farhadi sir, I'm all for what you spoke about earlier in terms of the long-term solutions and changing mindsets and de-radicalization. But at the same time, we're also dealing with more urgent threats, and I want more urgent solutions as well in terms of protecting our people from the kind of attacks that we see in the country. And I want to then understand that despite the fact that we have tried to engage on various fronts with the Afghan Taliban, we still haven't seen the kind of response that perhaps one would hope for. And so moving forward, especially if we talk again about the issue of equipment or safe havens or terror financing, these are important aspects that are not just limited to the people who are using these weapons, but is also more towards disengaging this framework and network. And in that, don't you think that the Afghan Taliban regime also has a role to play? And how much further can we actually go in terms of our expectation from them, given the fact that it hasn't happened so far?
Absolutely. The Afghan Taliban have the power in Afghanistan right now. They have the keys to the weapons depots. And they are saying that no, the weapons are under control and it's not exactly the truth, etc. But we see the skirmishes happening in Pakistan again and again. And I think in Afghanistan, the lack of communication of Pakistan in general with the Afghan people has made it that everyone in Afghanistan thinks that Pakistan likes the Taliban government, and therefore they are dealing with the Taliban government, and Afghans are frankly puzzled that Pakistan likes the Afghan government, and now it has a problem with the Afghan government. So that's why my humble suggestion is that wider communication is necessary with the people of Afghanistan. That beyond this issue, we have our future to organize as neighbors, neighbors that will do fair trade with each other, will create a common economic zone one day, and there's a better model that we can create than just focusing on the Taliban. And right now, yes, Pakistan has most influence on the Taliban because the Taliban used to live in Pakistan. So I could at least say that the people in the government do know intimately the Taliban. So all kinds of pressure on the Taliban should be exerted for the interest of Pakistan. But for the interest of both countries, I think
Yeah, Dr. Farhadi, people like you, of course, you are someone who can be considered as an embodiment of a think tank. There are several more from Afghanistan side, there are several more from Pakistan side. Of course, people like you can play a significant role when it comes to bring in both of the people on the table to obviously figure out a resolve to the border problem and whatever is happening out there, because this not only affects Pakistan but of course has a very negative effect on common Afghan people's life. So shouldn't it be like this, that very soon we should be seeing people like you come into Islamabad or come into Kabul and talking and discussing about it and coming up with a sort of a charter or sort of a framework how to fix it?
I think we should, because we have to organize the next few decades of our relationship as two countries. We have to take the emotions and the wrong information out of the picture. The Americans are gone, the Soviets are gone. Perhaps Pakistan also would benefit a fresh look at Afghanistan and see with which elements can the progressive agenda be prepared. And I'm not saying to delete Taliban because they are here, it's a reality. But I think the Taliban have to change, they have to evolve, they also have to have a vision of several decades later, which they don't. I think also I see that the international community is losing interest in helping our region with development aid. Therefore, we have to find economic progress solutions, investments attracted from the rest of the world, because the total sum of the population between Pakistan and Afghanistan, it's about 300 million people. So it's a consumer market. So we have to look at things differently to attract investments in the area, to improve the economic lives of the people, and to enlarge the discourse, the political discourse, and give hope to the young people so they don't go this way.
I was coming to my last one, but since you talked also about investments, I want to know whether you think that is possible and how exactly do we move forward with that, given the fact that we still don't have any recognition of the Afghan Taliban regime, number one. And number two, there have been some analysts that we've spoken to who have proposed the possibility of conducting operations within Afghanistan, perhaps with the help of the US. How would you respond to that?
So recognition of the Taliban is, I think, Pakistan has a lot of influence that it can exert on the Taliban to change the way they are governing right now. I look at in Afghanistan, it's not possible for a lady to lead such as yourself, Sana, a talk show like this tonight, unfortunately. But we should be able to. The Taliban have to accept some changes, change the way they are governing. They are dealing with women, and recognition after that will be possible not only by Pakistan but Islamic countries as well. As far as military attacks to take care of these elements, I think it creates more animosity generally with Afghanistan, and it feeds the narrative of the people who want to create enmity with Pakistan. I think better to protect the Pakistani side right now, and better to find the political situation, but something long-term, something where we could see over 3 decades how we see commonly our region prospering with more stability and less radicalization.
Absolutely. Thank you very much, Farhadi Sahab, for joining us and being a part of the discussion. Always a pleasure to have you on the show. Farrukh, anything you'd like to add before we conclude?
Yeah. Last minute again. Yeah. I'll have to try to actually squeeze in as much as I can. But here's the thing: the trigger for this discussion actually came from the fact that recently we saw a statement coming from the U.S. that they have actually not left behind any weapons. It is Afghan government which left it. To me, that is a distinction without a difference. Why? Because if Faisal is my neighbor and somebody is chucking stuff into his house, he comes to me. I say, no, I'm not responsible. My daughter is responsible. Right? To Faisal, it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
So what exactly can be done now? Now that the US is gone, now that the people who had the weapons have left it behind. Right now, Pakistan is facing double whammy. Afghan Taliban are carrying the same weapons, then Pitafi is also carrying. And we don't have the advanced weaponry of the kind. At least grant us access to similar kind of weaponry so that we can fight back. We have a good chance. This is the biggest thing that I think is important.
One liner.
Yes,
then I'm going to add to that.
One liner, I agree with Farrukh.
All right, thank you very much. I don't think you'll have anything to add to that.
I have.
But it's okay, let Faisal have the last word sometime. That's all we have from the debate. We'll see you tomorrow.